My name's Dan Lawton, and I've been practicing law in San Diego for 24 years. We have a 5-person firm downtown, and we specialize in intellectual property litigation and appellate practice.
What is your firm's pro bono policy?
We're a small firm. We have 5 people, so we don't have a formal policy like a lot of big firms would have, or even medium-sized firms. It's very ad hoc. You know, if we see a case that we like and the people need it handled on a pro bono basis, we try to do it if we can, if that's a financially responsible thing for us to do.
Tell us about an interesting pro bono matter on which you worked.
In 1992, I got a phone call from a guy who was an inmate at the MCC in downtown San Diego. He knew that I did asylum cases at that time on a pro bono basis, so I went to visit him. He was an Irishman by the name of Kevin Artt. He'd been arrested by the FBI on an extradition warrant, and he was fleeing persecution by the British government. He had landed here in San Diego, was living under an alias, which was Kevin Cohane at the time. And he wanted us to represent him, see if we could stop him from being sent back to the north of Ireland, get him asylum, and that was the beginning of my work for Kevin Artt.
What was your role on his case?
He hired us to do his asylum application vis-a-vis what was then called the INS and claim asylum for him under the Refugee Act of 1980. Later, after it was clear that he was going to need a full-blown defense on an extradition case that was being brought by the British government with the full cooperation of the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was clear that I was just not going to be able to do all of that. It was going to be a massive effort. And that's when I called Jim Brosnahan from Morrison & Foerster and asked him to come on board and help us. And he did that. And together, Morrison & Foerster and I worked for Kevin for the better part of about 8 years. I exited in 2000, and the MoFo team kept going, you know, after that for some period of time.
Tell us about a memorable moment from the pro bono matter.
There were many memorable moments, but maybe the most memorable moment was the moment when he was released from jail in San Francisco on a $1 million bond. We had been in the court in San Diego with all of his sureties who were there to present their collateral and satisfy the magistrate that they were good for this $1 million of property that was being pledged to secure his bail bond of $1 million. This was a guy who had a murder conviction and a prison escape in Northern Ireland. And I went up to San Francisco after that and went to the federal building and met Jim Brosnahan there, and Jennifer Small and Mark Donnie and some other people from his legal team. And I'd been seeing him in an orange jumpsuit and a pair of slippers for the previous 6 years. He was in jail for 6 years before he was released. And to see him walk out the door wearing a suit was really cool. And we went down to the street. We walked out onto the street, and we wanted to get him the hell out of there, get him in a car and get him away before Judge Legg could change his mind, or before some guy from the INS came around the corner and put the cuffs on him and took him off to detention, you know, on an INS immigration hold or something. And he wanted to stop, and he said, I just want to stand here on the street for a second. I haven't stood on a street in 6 years. And we took this picture, and that was a special moment.
Wait, hold on, hold it up. Wait. You angle it down just a bit. There you go. And do me a favor, say the last part again. That this was a special moment.
And that was a special moment.
Beautiful.
And what was the outcome of both the asylum and the extradition parts of the case?
We filed the asylum application, which was pretty voluminous, and the INS never has ruled on it in 14 years. It remains pending to this day. In the extradition case, there were some external events that happened that affected that case. In 1998, the Irish governments and the British government and some other parties entered into the Good Friday Agreement, which ended the conflict in the north of Ireland and set up a framework for dealing with a lot of the issues that had built up over the years, including release of political prisoners. And as part of that agreement, all political prisoners on both sides were required to be released, no matter what they had done, no matter what they had remaining on their sentences. When this happened, Jim Brosnahan went to the court in San Francisco, we were then in the Ninth Circuit, and asked the Ninth Circuit to order the British government to show cause why the case wasn't now moot. And I think the Ninth Circuit said, gee, you know, what good is it going to be for us to put all this effort into deciding whether this guy should be extraditing him back to Great Britain, only to have Great Britain say, well, under the Good Friday Agreement, we have to let him go. And even the British, you know, after 8 years, recognized that reality, and they sent a very terse diplomatic note saying that they were dropping the extradition. They threw in the towel, and that was October 31, 2000, and that was the end of that case. And so Kevin Artt had a happy ending, I think. He's living in California today as a free man, and he's married and has a young family, and but we're still waiting for that asylum application to get ruled on.
How has your work on this pro bono matter influenced your work as an attorney and your outlook as an attorney?
I think it's caused me to look at our government in a different way, maybe in a more cynical way. The government really treated Kevin Artt very badly during the entire history of that case, which was over 8 years. At one point, we had gotten a work permit for him from the INS. He had a job lined up in Northern California. He needed to work and make money after he came out on bail in order to support himself. And the U.S. attorney in Washington, at the last minute, overruled the INS and ordered them to rescind that work permit. Now, the only reason for them to have done that, I think, was to keep Kevin Artt as destitute and as miserable as possible during the war that they were fighting with him, which we thought was a really mean and sneaky thing to do. And that has affected the way that you know, I look at our government as a litigant. They're just as capable of being dirty and sneaky and mean as any litigant in the private bar. It's also been a reminder to me of how important it is for people in Kevin Artt's position. I mean, people who don't have any money, who don't have any juice, who don't know anybody in high places. When they go up against the muscle and the might of someone like the U.S. government or the government of Great Britain,